Hello, we are going to look at some one-step equations just to make sure you got this, okay? So I'm going to probably ask you some questions as we go, and you'll just answer them, and I think that'll be pretty self-evident. So let's start by looking at this very simple one-step equation. So the first question we always want to ask ourselves is, what is happening? Now, let's talk about what I mean by what is happening. What I mean is, what is happening on the side of the equal sign that has an x. So we can imagine that this equation is kind of split into two sides, one side to the left of the equation and one side to the right of the equation. So when I say what is happening with the x, what we mean is the x adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing with another value? Well, in this case, clearly we're adding 6. So the next question you ask yourself is, what's the opposite of add 6? The answer to that question is to subtract 6. And in algebra, we always do something to both sides. And I'm going to draw a line, and that just indicates I'm ready to simplify. Okay? So now let's look at what we have on the left side of the equation, the left side of the equal sign. I have a positive 6 and a negative 6. Those are zero pairs. They are opposites. If I have 6 of something and I take 6 away, I have nothing. So these cancel out. And all I have left on that side of the equation is an x. So I'm going to bring that x down, equals, and then I just simply simplify the right side of the equation. So negative 8 minus 6, you can just plug that right into your calculator. I like to look at it that way. There's several ways to look at this on the right side. We could say negative 8 plus negative 6, but to not get confused, you just put in your calculator exactly what you see. So I see a negative 8 minus 6, okay? That's what I see. So if I put that in my calculator, I'm going to get a negative 14. Okay. Now it's going to be your turn a little bit. I did this. You might say, Miss Alice, that looks like the same problem. And you'd be correct. The reason I did that is because I want you to recognize that it doesn't matter which one is where. So if I have a positive 6 and a positive x, it doesn't matter if it says x plus 6 or 6 plus x. It doesn't matter. What you're going to do is going to be the same because our goal is to get the x by itself. We want to get the x by itself. So in order to do that, I need to get rid of this 6. So what do you think our first step is going to be? I hope you said that we need to subtract 6 from both sides, just like we did before. Okay, so these are going to cancel out again. I bring my x down, equals negative 8 minus 6 is negative 14 again. It hasn't changed since we last looked at it. Okay, let's look at another problem. X minus 6 is negative 8. X minus 6 is negative 8 this time. Okay, so the first question we ask ourselves is, what is happening with the x? I'll let you answer that this time. And I bet you said, well, obviously, we're subtracting 6. And you're right. So if we're subtracting 6, what's our first step? What are we going to do next? Awesome. I bet you said we're going to add 6 because you know that addition is the opposite of subtraction. Okay, again, these are going to cancel out. We're going to bring our x down, equals negative 8 plus 6. If you plug that into your calculator, it will tell you that it is negative 2. Right on. Let's look at another one. Now, again, I changed the order, but this is exactly the same as x minus 6. Why is this exactly the same? Because we have a negative 6 and we have a positive x, just like we did in the previous problem. Okay. So what am I going to do to get the x by itself? Right, I'm going to add 6 to both sides because that's the zero pair, right? You have to ask yourself, what's going to cancel out this negative 6? Well, the positive 6 will do it. Of course, we do it to both sides because it's algebra. I'm going to bring down my x, and once again, I have negative 2. So you can see that those last two problems were really the same problem. Oops. Okay, so let's look at what we got here. A lot of times you're going to see division in algebra, and it's going to be written like a fraction. This is kind of like a fraction, isn't it? But it's a lot of times you're going to see it look like this. This and this are the same. Okay, so a slash mark is the same thing. It indicates division in algebra. All right, so I just kind of gave it away. What operation are we looking at? We're looking at division. So what's the opposite of division? What do we need to do to both sides? We need to multiply both sides by 6, because when you ask yourself, what is the x doing? Well, it's being divided by 6. What's the opposite of divide by 6? Multiply by 6. When you multiply, please use parentheses to indicate that you're doing that. Parentheses on both sides. Okay, so these are going to cancel out, because 6 divided by 6, or 6 times 1/6, which is what we're really seeing here, is 1. So we're going to pull that x down. And then we have negative 48 times 6. So if you put that in your calculator, 48 times 6 is 288, but we have a negative and we have a positive. And when we do that, when we multiply those two, we're going to end up with a negative 288. Okay, let's look at another one. Okay, same question. What is happening here? Now that minus might have thrown you off. I hope not, because the answer is x is being divided by negative 6. Okay, it looks a little bit like subtraction. Don't let that throw you off. This is one thing. This is a negative 6, and we are dividing by negative 6. So the opposite is going to be multiply by negative 6. And again, we're going to use parentheses to show that. And simplify this out. Those are going to cancel. X equals, a negative times a negative is a positive 288. Okay. Great, so let's go over and find some multiplication problems. Okay. All right, so what is happening here? I bet you said that they are multiplying. This says 6 times x, or x times 6. Same. So the opposite of multiplication is division, I bet you said. So when we want to show division, again, we're going to draw that line. You're not going to use the little dividing sign. Okay, no. You're going to show it by drawing a line underneath. So if x is multiplying by 6, the opposite would be to divide by 6. Okay, so we're dividing by 6 on both sides. These are going to cancel. I'm ready to simplify. Negative 48 divided by 6 is negative 8. Okay. Let's look at another one. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, what is happening with the x here? What is happening? All right, I hope you recognized again that this is a negative 6. We know that when a number and a variable are just kind of nice and close to each other like that with no other symbols in between, they're multiplying. So this time we're multiplying by negative 6. And what's the opposite of multiply by negative 6? Right, divide by negative 6. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 6. Cancel. We have x equals a negative divided by a negative is a positive 8. All right, I hope that was helpful. That was just a little review. If you don't feel confident about this, if you weren't able to answer a lot of the questions correctly, please email me. We'll set up an office time and we'll get you going on this and you'll feel really confident. All right. Bye, guys.